Hi, everybody. My name's Tony Sarathchandra. I head up Cloud Services Product Management for Juniper. And I wanted to talk to you a little bit about how the edge of the network from a service provider perspective is converging and changing. And so the title of the presentation you can read is the Telco CPE and how the business edge is transforming around the Telco CPE. Okay. So to understand the context of what's happening today, for those of us who've been in the industry for a long time, as myself, it's good to take a step back and see what's transpired over the last 20, 25 years when it comes to connectivity services, in particular connectivity services offered by service provider customers such as yourselves. So in the early 90s and perhaps late 80s, we had, frame relay, and of course frame relay evolved from X25, for those of us who can remember X25. And that sort of transformed over to MPLS-based VPNs using a same topology model from frame relay, from point to point, point to point to multi-point, with the advent of, and then layer 2 and layer 3 services, on top of IP MPLS VPNs, right? And of course, that is very prevalent service in the market today. And then, sometime around the mid-2000s, there was a need for remote access for remote offices, mobile devices, and whatnot. And there was a significant growth of IPsec-based connectivity and access into MPLS-based services around that time, which is also called hybrid WAN in some cases. And what I like to think about is we're sort of at this fourth sort of phase of this connectivity transition, where the hybrid WAN infrastructure is going through a phenomenal transformational change, where the industry is sort of calling as software-defined wide area networks, or SD-WAN, right? And SD-WAN, it's important to understand, is just about the connectivity, but there's a broader transformation of the services that's running on top of that connectivity. So it's important to understand that it's not just about the connectivity transformation, but the services that your customers consume on top of that connectivity is also changing. And then beyond that, what's probably going to happen, and we're seeing the advent of this already, is more and more traffic's going to the cloud. And whether it's private cloud or public cloud, the amount of traffic going east-west is actually decreasing, while the amount of traffic going north-south is actually increasing dramatically, particularly to public cloud providers. So basically, these are the sort of transformational aspects that we're seeing over the next, sort of 10 years or so. And that's the context that I'm sort of, providing you to, with this particular presentation. So, and this is actually backed up by data. Right, and this is a chart that I sort of show from time to time, and it's based on information from Gartner and others, where MPLS-based VPN services are actually projected to decline. Started last year in North America, and it's actually started last year in North America, and as well as is projected to start here in Europe at some time as well, and the customers are looking for new types of connectivity services. And so where are these customers and their dollars actually moving to? And there's pretty substantial data to indicate that a lot of these dollars are going towards SD-WAN based services. Not all, but a substantial portion, right? And so that's what's sort of projecting, or the drive that's projected to drive the growth of SD-WAN as a connectivity transformational service over the next year. So, tremendous compound annual growth rate from 2015 to 2020 with, tremendous market share gains. So with that in mind, it's important to understand how SD-WAN and MPLS-based VPNs can coexist and how this would actually have a transformational impact to your existing infrastructure. So we have at Juniper looked at that, and of course we've been, one of the fathers of IP MPLS VPN with Kirti and others here in the room, looked at this from a foundational perspective and come up with an architecture that marries both together. And what's important here is we have all of the sort of the bells and whistles of SD-WAN, as you call it, But we also have a sort of a key linchpin, which is the ability to integrate the SD-WAN service into an existing IP-MPLS service. And that is very important if you are looking to transform and migrate your existing MPLS-based customer set to this new particular service type. And of course, we have all of the SD-WAN, analytics and the SLA capability, which I'll talk a little bit about, and the central policy management and so forth. But really the key point of the presentation I want to emphasize is the fact that you need to have an SD-WAN service which is tightly integrated with the MPLS and have customers be able to select on a site-by-site basis which sites need SD-WAN and which perhaps can remain on your IP-MPLS-based services. The second thing that's important to understand is the CPE at the branch itself is changing and going through a tremendous level of disruption. We see that from announcements by the primary vendor in this space who are coming out with potential platforms that disrupt their existing install base. And so what's happening there is, today you have, what I call the legacy branch, where you might have a set of different types of appliances or devices that are performing various functions in the network. And those functions are getting virtualized into a platform that allows greater agility and better sort of consolidation of that service into that underlying platform. We call that at Juniper Cloud CPE. But what's important to understand is that the platform is exactly that. It's just a platform. It is not a closed system. It's very open, and it supports multiple services at the branch from both Juniper and other vendors, and sometimes even our competitors. And you see a selection of the ones that we've sort of done some press with on the right-hand side. What's important to note here is that the services need to work very tightly together with the connectivity service that I mentioned earlier. So when you think about SD-WAN transformation, if you just think about SD-WAN, you're really only seeing 50% of the problem. You need to think about how is your customer who might have a next-gen firewall or a WAN optimizer at the branch, how are they going to introduce an SD-WAN service as they move towards this new service evolution? And in some cases, the service itself may need to sit at the branch for the functionality that it provides, like a WAN optimization is a good example, that it's sort of bookended. And in some cases, the service could potentially be taken into the POP or virtualized in the data center type environment. In terms of flipping back to the connectivity service, there are various types of connectivity service options that you can choose to offer to your customers. The first is, basically kind of a replacement to the adjunct, the remote access or the IPsec VPN scenario that I mentioned from the early 2000s, right? Which is basically an overlay link back into your MPLS network. But the key difference here is that it's centrally controlled and centrally managed, unlike perhaps the service that was offered, a decade or more ago. Okay, so that's sort of what's shown here back into the telco cloud from the remote office. The second scenario is that more and more customers are choosing to have more than one broadband provider. And this is kind of one of the fundamental tenets of SD-WAN, because the goal of SD-WAN is to provide a good enough SLA by basically multiplexing your traffic across multiple broadband providers, so that anytime a particular link, which is obviously best effort because internet transport based, doesn't meet the particular SLA, the system is intelligent enough to load balance either at a flow level or a packet level across multiple providers and provide that level of SLA for your application that you might have needed from a private dedicated link in the past. And so with a dual or more links from the access side, you have to have the intelligence here to dynamically load balance on a per packet basis and provide that level of SLA capability potentially to your customers. Moving forward, you can also offer a very similar architecture as hybrid VPNs that have existed from a decade or so ago together with SD-WAN. Most customers who have IP/MPLS service are not looking to introduce it overnight. They're going to have IP/MPLS-based sites for an indefinite period of time. They might introduce an SD-WAN-based link. They might choose to shift their non-business critical traffic to the SD-WAN link, primarily driven by the cost efficiencies per bit on the SD-WAN link, which is obviously using broadband internet, and then still keep the IP/MPLS for backup or SLA critical traffic. So it's important to offer the hybrid VPN scenario where you have a link into your MPLS network as you do today from a CPE perspective, but also dynamically traffic balance or load balance traffic from the remote office back into that network across a broadband transport-based network at the same time. And so this is an important capability that we see more and more customers asking. They don't want to sort of cut the dependency on MPLS overnight because it works for them, it's reliable, it does what it needs to do from a business perspective. The other aspect of this, which I haven't really touched on so far, is the right-hand side of this diagram. And this is all about how you get optimized connectivity to SaaS providers and SaaS applications. And this is one of the key drivers of this change in the architecture that I sort of presented to you at the start of the presentation, the cloud connector piece. More and more applications are going there, and so really these guys are really trying to get to here, right? And have optimized access and connectivity to get to here, and in some cases to less critical applications down here, right? We all check Facebook from time to time. I'm sure you do as well. So it's important that the SD-WAN architecture you go with provides an option to have several ways to break out to SaaS-based applications at the various points in the network that might be useful from a customer perspective. What you see here today in this diagram is the typical model where traffic is sort of backhauled or tromboned into a hub site, and this is very typical for an enterprise that has a fairly strict security posture, usually has a security team, and they run a set of managed firewalls, and everything needs to go through that firewall. And so the firewalls reside at usually the internet peering points, and so anything that needs to go to the internet must go through that firewall, right? And unless the CSO provides explicit approval to not do that. And so this is pretty typical of most mid-sized to large enterprise traffic or network traffic going to the internet, whether it's SaaS or non-critical SaaS apps. So with SD-WAN, what is possible is you can selectively break out. Now, breakout is not in its entirety new concept. Local breakout has been there for a decade or more. But what's new is with SD-WAN is you can have a policy that is enforced in your controller that says, hey, when your particular SaaS that comes for Salesforce.com or Office 365, and it comes from, let's say, the sales Wi-Fi, VLAN, right? Maybe you don't want to apply it for your network or your engineering VLAN within the branch. But you can have these kind of policies that say selectively break that traffic out to the internet, okay? And this is done dynamically. What's important there is that then you need to have your security posture implemented in that local breakout scenario. Or you need to have that particular part of the network segmented out to ensure that your security posture conditions are met, okay? But this is a pretty common scenario for applications that are moving more and more to the cloud. The second scenario is providing much more of an optional or optimal, I should say, regional breakout, right? And here, you do the breakout within your network, and this is something that a lot of you already do within your existing IP/MPLS VPNs. But the new thing that you might want to offer is you might selectively break out SaaS-based applications from an optimized egress point within your local regional breakout versus taking to some other remote site to do the internet breakout. And then the third and the last is where you have a dedicated link, right? And this is usually typically a premium service that's offered by, again, most of you today. And that provides a direct connect from your existing MPLS service to the cloud provider. What's important to understand is all of these concepts are not new. But the ability or the need for the customer to have a choice in these is what's driving the change. So the customers want to have options to do these kinds of scenarios, and it's important for you as a service provider to offer these kinds of services to ensure you maintain those customers moving forward from a service connectivity service perspective. The other piece that's important is the visualization. Nobody likes to outsource their network to a third party and not see what's going on in that network. It is, after all, your own traffic and your own applications that are traversing that network. So it's important for you as a service provider to offer granular visibility to the end customer of the applications that are breaking out at the local breakout point, at the regional breakout point, or from a site-to-site perspective, right? And what I'm talking about here is not just bytes in, bytes out, but application-level visibility, okay? And that's what we are working towards, so that the customer can go into a portal and they can see for their corporate VPN or corporate internet which applications are traversing which links at a given point in time, which applications are egressing and breaking out at those selected sites that they have ensured from a corporate perspective the policies are sort of implemented from a security perspective. So having the ability to drill down into each link and say, hey, what's using all my bandwidth that I'm paying large sums of money to you guys for, right, is important. That keeps the customer happy and makes sure that they understand they're getting value for the dollars that they're spending. And it also gives them a visibility of the link performance so that they can say, the SLA that my service provider is promising me is actually being met, and I'm not getting duped, right? So that's an important level of visibility for you to provide back to the customer. And it's important to do that on a per customer basis, right? Because after all, you're managing thousands of links with hundreds of customers, and having this granular visibility and being able to show that in a scalable way is certainly non-trivial in large networks. And then additionally, the ability to drill down on a per app, right? So this is increasingly important for IT departments that are trying to troubleshoot, and the application developers say, oh, it's the networking guys. They can't get their stuff together, and that's why my app is failing, right? So being able to drill into a link, seeing if it's SQL or it's some other type of app, that's whether it's enterprise or not, that's actually using up the bandwidth, and perhaps even seeing the flows within the traffic and being able to drill to that level is going to be increasingly important as part of your overall service offer as you move forward. Of course, Juniper has an architecture that does all of that, and we call it Cloud CPE, and it provides a bunch of things, but most importantly, it provides a way to virtualize services both at the data center and the POP side, as well as from a branch perspective. And we provide a set of APIs and components that is open and interchangeable depending on your particular environment. We have a set of protocols that are all open standards based at the networking level. We don't use any proprietary protocols for SD-WAN. We don't need to be bookended to be specific. We have a set of controllers, including Contrail, as well as for SD-WAN, the network service controller. We have a set of service management capability, including the very important customer visibility piece, so that you can provide the level of visibility to your customers. And then probably the most important aspect is the ability to integrate with your existing PE-based infrastructure. So with our current PE-based solution, we have the ability to support an SD-WAN service that is fully multi-tenant, that supports hardware-based IPsec scale up to thousands of tunnels per slot. And then we support policy enforcement only at the SD-WAN edge. A lot of SD-WAN vendors, alternative vendors, require policy enforcement at both sides. So we do not overload the provider edge device with granular traffic level policies. Rather, we provision policies at the branch site, and the edge device basically maintains traffic symmetry based on the application that it receives from the branch device. And of course, this allows seamless integration into your existing IP/MPLS VPN services, which is all the very much more important, as I mentioned earlier. Moving forward, we're extending this architecture to virtualize components and really sort of provide you even additional flexibility. The first thing is we're looking to virtualize the PE completely, so that if you so choose, you can have a virtual PE termination point within your OpenStack environment together with Contrail SDN for that hub site for the termination of the access connections, whether it's managed or unmanaged across a broadband link. The second thing is that we're introducing topology synchronization through BGP route reflection across all the CPEs and that virtualized gateway. So you have JUNOS-based mature BGP scale from the CPE to the PE that scales to hundreds and thousands of sites, so that any LAN segment between the local branch and any other branch is dynamically learned and propagated selectively with BGP into your IP/MPLS VPN based on the specific tenant's routing network. The third thing is we are virtualizing the CPE itself. We're moving away from physical hardware to virtual hardware, or virtual software, of course, that runs on white box hardware, right? We support, and I have a slide coming up that supports a range of options depending on where you are in the level of CPE deployments and where you like to be. And then lastly, we have the self-care component, so that integrates seamlessly into that overall end-to-end ecosystem and provides the customer that all-important visibility into the network. Because after all, if you have an SD-WAN solution but is not able to show the customer what the SD-WAN solution is actually doing in the network, the perceived value of that service is greatly lessened. So these are key enhancements that we're making to the solution, and so stay tuned for more from us on this moving forward. And here's kind of our CPE portfolio. Probably a slide that some of you might have seen in the past. Just to run through real quickly, I'm not going to get into the bits and bytes here, but we have our traditional hardware integrated CPEs. We fully support the VSRX as a SD-WAN VNF on white box CPEs today. We've done tests on standard x86 servers on Dell, as well as HP, as well as third-party CPE like ADVA, etc. We have a small form factor NFX platform. By the way, the NFX platform, for those of you who are not familiar, is our open VNF platform for supporting those third-party services. And we have one that's coming out that supports LTE built-in, so that you have day one connectivity without having wireline connectivity needed as a prerequisite for initial service turn-up and provisioning. There's two models there. We have a mid-range platform and we have a high-range platform. The key point here is that all of them have full service automation, the full service visibility for the end customer, that being the tenant, through a single multi-tenant self-care portal, SD-WAN, and all-important security capability through our next-gen firewall. And we have a very sort of contentious but rich third-party ecosystem that we are developing on these platforms. In some cases, our competitors. In some cases, our very strong partners. But the key point here I want you to take away is that the solution itself is very open. You don't need to take all parts of the solution. You can take a single part of the solution or a single component of the solution and choose to do the integration, depending on your particular needs. And these are certain things that we're working on, and you'll see more announcements from us down this path in future this year. So just to wrap up, in summary, we have an SD-WAN architecture, what I would consider to be a unique implementation in the industry. It is not proprietary. It works seamlessly with your existing IP/MPLS-based services. It takes your existing infrastructure investments into account and leverages them, and in some cases takes them to the next level to virtualize that, depending on where you are in that lifecycle process. We have a solution that virtualizes services both within the POP and the data center in the context of NFV, as well as a set of platforms that virtualizes it at the branch site, so that depending on your customer's needs, you can offer the choice of service transformation along with the connectivity service as the case customers move in that direction. And of course, we believe we have one of the best solutions in the industry when it comes to this type of solution, because of our routing heritage, as well as our security heritage and switching, that we can offer a differentiated solution to your customers. So that's all I had. Thank you very much.